The 2026 World Cup has officially arrived. There are only a few days left. A tournament where 48 countries will participate, 104 matches will be played. The biggest tournament in football history. We are officially going to be saturated with football this summer. But right now, somewhere in the world, there are many players sitting at home who we expected to participate in this tournament before the squads were announced. They couldn't find a place in their own country's squads, some due to injury, some due to manager preferences, maybe because they weren't good enough, or maybe the exact opposite of that. But they all have one common point. I'm sure the biggest dream of all these players is to wear the jersey of the country they are a citizen of and fight for their country, not because they stopped working. But football can sometimes give everything while sometimes taking everything back. I think that's why football is beautiful and the most followed sport in the world. In this video, we are going through the big stars who will miss the 2026 World Cup one by one. Heartbreaking injuries, manager decisions that shocked fans, stories that prove the most ruthless moments in football sometimes happen before even a single ball is struck. Germany, France, the Netherlands, Spain, and Brazil, which has more heartbreaking absences than almost any other country on the planet. If you haven't come across one of my videos before, welcome to my channel. In this channel, stories that don't make headlines, footballers, and everything about football is told, especially everything about this World Cup. So I recommend you subscribe so you don't miss the videos coming throughout this World Cup. And if you want to take a look at my other videos, you can browse the channel. Let's start with Germany. One player, one ruthless moment. Serge Gnabry had spent the last few months doing everything right. His form had really reached very high levels. Well, it should have been that way, because he is a Bayern Munich player. You already understand what we mean by saying that. In the last 7 matches he played with the German national team, before the squad announcement, he scored in 4 of them. At Bayern Munich, he was combining with a devastating attacking line. Goals, assists, and performances, reminding everyone why he is one of the most dangerous wide players in Europe. Julian Nagelsmann, Germany's national team manager, he was building his World Cup attacking plan around Gnabry. That was the plan. Then, in training, his adductor groin muscle tore without being exposed to any contact at all. Not an injury that happened dramatically during a match, just a training session, and everything disappeared. Here's the detail that makes this situation even more painful. This is not the first time this has happened to him. Gnabry also missed the World Cup in 2018 in Russia due to injury. A different injury, a different period of his career. But looking at the outcome, exactly the same devastating result. Germany goes to this tournament with a real question mark hanging over their attacking lines. How will you score goals without Serge Gnabry? No one has been able to give a convincing answer yet. France, the team that some consider the real favorite. Their squad depth creates an almost completely unfair competition. But that same depth also created its own victims. Eduardo Camavinga wasn't injured, he was simply not selected. A player who won the Champions League twice with Real Madrid at the age of 22. While being a player who presses at the highest level, wins balls, and creates positions, he unfortunately won't be able to participate in this World Cup. In almost every other national team on the planet, Camavinga's place in the starting 11 is guaranteed. In France, however, he couldn't even get into the 26-man squad. Didier Deschamps, going to what is his last World Cup as France's manager, looked at one of the most talented young midfielders in the world and said, "You're not in my squad!" Some players are born in the wrong generation. Camavinga, however, was born in the wrong country. Actually, the place he was born was Angola, but ultimately he is a French national footballer. In France, however, he couldn't even get into the 26-man squad. But the most ruthless French absence didn't come from a manager's decision. It came from April and from a player named Hugo Ekitike. Ekitike had just completed one of the most remarkable debut seasons in Premier League history. 17 goals for Liverpool under Arne Slot. A forward who announced himself to the world in the Premier League, the world's toughest league. He was also truly having a good year for himself. In March, he had scored the winning goal against Brazil in a friendly match with the France jersey. Not only was he in the squad, he was doing what was expected of him, scoring goals and becoming one of the team's most important attacking options. But the bad news came for him in April. His Achilles tendon ruptured. And as those who know understand, this is a very painful, agonizing injury, and an injury whose recovery spreads over a long period of time. He won't be able to play for the rest of 2026. In other words, his year is over. Knowing that he had already proved he belonged there, he will watch this tournament from the sidelines, from his home, and unfortunately from the TV screen. Knowing he scored the goal that knocked out Brazil. and knowing that it still changed nothing. The Netherlands comes to this World Cup with real belief. Van Dijk, De Jong, Gakpo, they have genuinely quality players. However, the injuries and decisions in recent months have significantly changed the face of this team. Xavi Simons had been waiting for a moment like this throughout his entire career, just like all other footballers. After seasons at PSG and Leipzig, after establishing himself as one of the most creative players in European football, this World Cup was going to be the stage where he would announce himself to the world. Late April, Tottenham, Wolves match, an ordinary Premier League fixture. Simons suddenly went down holding his knee. According to the scan results done after the match, the result was painful. His cruciate ligament had ruptured, one of the most severe injuries that can happen to a footballer. In this World Cup cycle, Simons had become Koeman's most consistent creator. He was the player who could create something from nothing when the Netherlands needed a moment. He was the most creative footballer of this Dutch generation, an outstanding talent who could unlock the locks when needed when the task fell to him. There were 26 days between his injury and the start of the tournament, but unfortunately the return to the pitch after this injury takes around 6 to 7 months. He will watch this World Cup from a rehabilitation room. But Simons wasn't the only piece the Netherlands lost. Manchester United centre-back Matthijs de Ligt underwent back surgery following an injury that had kept him out of action since November. He had hoped to delay this until after the tournament. In the end, he accepted that he couldn't do this. One of the calmest defenders in international football, missing from Koeman's defensive line, and then came the manager's decisions. Ronald Koeman chose not to call up Liverpool's explosive right-back Jeremy Frimpong, who had one of the most dynamic seasons in Premier League history. He also left out AZ Alkmaar's sought-after midfielder Kees Smit, two players who, for some, fully deserve to be in the squad. But in my opinion, it's a debatable topic, especially Jeremy Frimpong's game this season. Looking at the result, they are among the players who will be watching the matches in front of the TV. The Netherlands goes to this World Cup having lost strength, not from failure, but because of the circumstances and decisions that will be debated throughout the entire tournament. And now Spain, the European champions. And such big absences, creating a situation that has never been experienced before in World Cup history. For the first time, Spain will compete in a World Cup without a single player from Real Madrid's squad. Think about this. Real Madrid, the club that dominated European football for 10 years. The source of Carvajal, Modric, Kroos, Benzema, the backbone of the game's greatest club team, not a single player of theirs in Spain's squad. The most striking individual absence is Dean Huijsen, the 20-year-old center-back who transferred from Bournemouth to the Bernabeu last summer. He had started in the first 11 in 5 of the 6 matches he could play in the Spain jersey before the squad announcement. He was expected not just to get into the squad, but to start directly in the first 11. He is hoped to be Spain's defensive cornerstone for the next 10 years. Yes, his first season at Real Madrid was inconsistent, and as a result, De La Fuente's decision was in the direction of not including Huijsen in the squad, and another of the team's legends, Dani Carvajal, Spain's starting right back. The man who played every minute of Euro 2024 as one of Spain's most critical defensive players. He couldn't recover from his October injury and was forced to completely stop playing football. As a result of his age as well, he is now retired, and the injury problems don't end with that. Barcelona's midfielder Fermin Lopez, who contributed 30 goals and assists in the 2024-25 season, one of the most productive periods by any player in La Liga, suffered a foot fracture requiring surgery. He's absent. Porto's forward and one of Spain's most exciting attacking talents, Samu Aguehawa, ruptured his anterior cruciate ligament in February. He left before the tournament even began. The reigning European champions are coming without 4 players who played a central role, either in winning that championship or in building the road to this World Cup. For Luis de la Fuente, this is not just a selection difficulty. This is a crisis that the rest of the world hasn't yet fully realized. We will all be watching together. Will they truly experience a crisis? Or will their genetically embedded ability to dominate matches and the capacity to win, regardless of what happens, continue? And let's move on to Brazil, where the injuries are so many and so devastating that listing them honestly feels almost cruel to me. Let's start with João Pedro, Chelsea's forward. He scored 20 goals in the Premier League this season, one of the most productive seasons of any Brazilian forward in recent history. He almost dominated the world's toughest league. Carlo Ancelotti looked at these numbers, but his decision was different. The player who would be in the squad instead of him was Igor Thiago. He decided he would adapt better and contribute more. Regarding this year, João Pedro will only be remembered for the goal celebrations he made from the goals he scored, but unfortunately not even for the World Cup. In addition to this, among the absences who won't be in the squad this year are Richarlison, Savinho, and Joe Linton. All left out. This also tells you something remarkable about the depth Ancelotti inherited. If players of this quality can't get into your squad, you're either building something truly special or your injury problems are about to become impossible to digest, because Brazil's injury list reads like a hospital report. Éder Militão, Real Madrid's center back. He underwent thigh surgery in April, and naturally he is also out of the squad. This player had suffered anterior cruciate ligament injuries in both knees within 15 months. Two of the most serious injuries in football. He recovered from both. And then a thigh injury takes away perhaps the very first opportunity he could have had to play in a major tournament when fully fit. Then Estêvão, 19 years old, Chelsea's newest transfer, whose reputation preceded him and who will join the team in the summer. He scored 5 goals in his last 6 national team. Matches before his injury. 5 goals in 6 matches for the national team at the age of 19. He wasn't just going to be in the squad, he was going to be one of the most watched players in the tournament. He suffered a hamstring, back of leg, injury. Football sometimes writes the most ruthless story that can be written. A 19-year-old genius at the form of his life was stopped by a muscle. He will watch the World Cup that was built for him while others play. But there is one more name, the one that hurts the most. Let's go back to the Brazil-Croatia match in December 2022, the World Cup quarterfinal. 215 million Brazilians were watching the match, holding their breath. Rodrygo had stepped up to take Brazil's second penalty. He needed to score to keep Brazil alive, but he missed the penalty. He couldn't convert it into a goal. In the end, Croatia was the side that advanced. And Rodrygo, at the age of 21, is still carrying this moment on his back like a burden he can't put down. One shot, one missed penalty. The heartbreak of an entire nation is loaded onto his shoulders. Just as I said at the beginning, football is a very different kind of sport. But he worked for 4 years without giving up in order to reverse all of this ill fate. 4 years spent becoming one of the best attacking players in world football at Real Madrid. 4 years spent knowing that this World Cup, played on the American continent, practically at home for Brazil, was the moment to respond, to rewrite the story. That dark day, March 2026, Real Madrid, Getafe match. When Rodrygo went down and started holding his right knee, not only he, but everyone watching that match felt as if they were experiencing that pain. His facial expression, even before the scan results, seemed to tell everything already. Yes, his anterior cruciate ligament had ruptured, and he knew what that meant. He had already said goodbye to the tournament that day. He won't be able to confess his sins. He won't be able to pay his penance. Perhaps he was forced to wait another 4 years. He won't be able to answer 2022. That penalty that defined a generation's heartbreak and the man who carried it alone won't be able to get that moment back. Brazil's World Cup begins on June 11th. And Rodrygo will be watching it either from a rehabilitation room or from the television at his home. He is currently 25 years old. He will probably see another World Cup, but we should still not look at it with certainty. When it comes to Rodrygo, what will happen is never certain. From all of this, we understand that in football there is sometimes no justice. There is only timing. And for Rodrygo, the timing was a catastrophe. So far, a complete catastrophe. 16 names from 5 countries. Some were stopped by the ruthlessness of injury, some by the strict mathematics of squad selection. Whatever happens, all these footballers want to wear their country's jersey and fight on the pitch and give the best they can. I hope the next World Cup is a very different story for them. Football gives you everything and then reminds you that it owes you nothing. I want you to write in the comments which absence affected you the most deeply. Which story moved you the most? For which one do you say, I think this was the right decision too? I will be reading every single answer one by one. If you enjoyed this video, if it made you feel something, press the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.